The relative minor scale is one that shares the same notes as a particular major scale. Take a look at my video introducing the major scale and you'll see that the major scale itself is made up of a particular set of intervals: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And it doesn't even matter what note you start from. As long as you follow the structure of tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, the sequence of notes will form a major scale. Before we move on to minor scales, let's take a look at something called the tonal centre. If you play a melody using the notes from a major scale, one of them will sound as though it's where the tune wants to finish, or the note around which every other note seems to revolve. Take a listen to this simple tune. Using the notes of a C major scale, the melody comes to rest on a C. It's as though that note has some sort of gravitational pull, and the music doesn't really feel finished unless we land on a C. Do the same thing using the notes of another major scale, say E. And it wants to land on an E. In terms of the key we're in, that note is called the keynote. In the context of the scale itself, the first note is referred to as the tonic. I like the term tonal centre because it describes the role it plays in creating a focus. So now we've looked at the idea of a tonal centre, let's talk about another related concept. Without changing the notes of the scale, it's possible to shift that tonal centre. Take a listen to this tune using the notes of C major. Hear how it wanted to finish on the note A? Well, we've successfully shifted the tonal centre away from the first note of the major scale to the sixth note, A. You can also hear how a melody that centres on the sixth note of the major scale has a different character from a major melody, as though there's a change of mood. In fact, we use a word that shares its origins with the word mood. We say we are playing on a mode of the major scale. This mode creates what is known as a minor scale. The mood is often described as more sombre, or introverted, or maybe darker than a major scale. Here's that same minor melody again. Since it uses the same notes as the major scale, we say it's the relative minor. One last thing. You don't need to know this, but the name of the sixth mode of the major scale is the Aeolian Mode. Now, unless you're especially interested in folk music or jazz, you might not learn the names of the various modes, but if you ever hear the Aeolian Mode mentioned, you'll know it's actually just the same as the relative minor scale. So that's it. The relative minor is the sixth mode of the major scale. Every major key has a relative minor key. It also means that the major key and the relative minor key share the same key signature. A key signature of 1 sharp, for example, could either signify that the piece of music is in the key of G major, or it could equally mean that it's in the relative minor. In this case, where the sixth note of G major is an E, the piece could also be in E minor. 3 flats would either mean E flat major, or else C minor. The relative minor always begins on the 6th step of the relative major scale. By the way, you'll often hear of the relative minor scale referred to as the natural minor. This just means that it uses exactly the same notes as the relative major.